Hey everyone, this is Nikachu, and I am here with Andrew Day 2 Dryden. Does Burn get all the new cool tools for Modern and Legacy? Is there some new hot stuff coming for the Burn archetype? Well, we're going to figure that out right now, and that is why we have Andrew Day 2 Dryden, Burn aficionado. He'll let us know what is going on. So, from the Burn point of view, have the spoilers for Amonkhet been very exciting?
Yeah, I mean, exciting in the sense that it gives you something to think about. I'm not sure the cards are actually going to prove to be all that worthwhile, but when anything, that comes out in a standard set has a chance to make waves in an Eternal format or two, it's always kind of fun, right? It's at least something you can look at, because normally, I play Merfolk as well. People on this channel will know. You look at those, spoilers, and you check the creature type, and sometimes you get like a 2/1 for 2 with no abilities. That's a Merfolk, and you're like, oh,
yeah, so
thanks,
sad,
Wizards.
absolutely sad.
Yeah, so when there's at least things that might be playable, yeah, it's kind of fun. It's fun to play around.
And it's been it's been a while for Burn because they got a huge boost with Swift Spear, with Eidolon the Great Revel, with Destructive Revelry. But this was all a long time ago. I mean, this was, I think, at least 2 years ago with Khans of Tarkir coming out. So they got a huge bump, but I don't think they've seen anything since then.
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, no. I mean, and before that was Skullcrack and like Gate Crash. So yeah,
that's super long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna dive into it. Harsh Mentor. 1 red, 1 colorless, a 2/2 human cleric. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. So, I talked about this a little bit in a group chat, and I immediately dismissed the card. I really hate cards where if we're giving our opponent a choice to decide whether choose to do this or that, they're always going to make the choice that's best for them. And unlike Eidolon of the Great Revel, where if you want to kill Eidolon of the Great Revel, you're definitely taking damage, you're definitely getting value, you can't say the same about Harsh Mentor. They could just let it sit on the battlefield, and if it's a problem, they will kill it for free. It won't cost them anything. Kolaghan's Command, Lightning Bolt, Fatal Push, basically everything path to exile. So you just play Harsh Mentor and it gets eliminated. Or they just opt to never activate any abilities that are on the battlefield, and you'll never get any value out of it.
Yeah, or, I mean, people are talking about fetch lands a lot, but, I mean, there are a lot of cards that, there are a lot of things this doesn't even hit. And to your point about giving your opponent a choice, to all the Burn players who are out there who know what they're talking about, there's a very good example from Burn that everyone knows, and that is Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil, a really great card if your opponent makes the wrong choice. But the problem is you're giving them the choice all the time, and if they're good, they're not gonna play it suboptimally. This card basically just, it's a 2-mana do nothing is something I'm worried about, and I don't think this is playable either. I'm dismissing this very quickly.
It's basically, it's the opposite. It's the parallel world of Eidolon of the Great Revel. It's hitting everything that Eidolon doesn't hit, more or less.
Yes, that's completely correct. Like it's not a cast trigger. It's an activated trigger. A lot of things in Modern don't have activated abilities. They have triggered abilities. Enter the battlefield effects.
Yeah, like Thought Not Seer.
Right, Thought Not Seer, things like that. I actually pulled up.
It doesn't even hit Planeswalkers, by the way. It does not hit Planeswalkers.
Right. And now there's probably a good reason for that, because that annoyed me at first too. But the thing is that as soon as you +1 to Liliana and it deals damage to the player, then you just direct it, so it effectively minuses 1 on Liliana or something.
Right.
Too good against Planeswalkers.
It would nuke all. It would be a really feel bad moment against the Planeswalkers.
But it would also be playable then. So,
it might be. Yeah, our opinion might completely change on this card.
Yeah. So I looked up because I knew we were going to talk about this card. According to MTG Goldfish, top played cards in Modern. And so off the top, you have like Thoughtseize, Path, Fatal Push, a lot of removal spells, Serum
Yeah, of
Vision.
course.
And then you start going down the list, and none of these cards even are either the right card type or have an activated ability. The first one you get to is number 9 at Fulminator Mage. Okay, fair enough. But then we go down.
They're not even ever going to play that against a burn deck.
Right, exactly. Well, 3-color you maybe could, but still, again, this is ignoring so many things. Like, you can just remove it. You can just I don't like to use the argument where it just dies to removal. I don't like to use that, fall back on that argument, because, well, so does Goyf. But guess what? Goyf's a really good card. Creatures just die to removal. That's how it works. But the fact of the matter is, it's very easy for this thing to die to removal without doing anything. The whole dies to removal thing doesn't mean it's not a good card. The whole dies to removal thing, what it means is it needs to do something, which is why enter the battlefield effects are what make cards playable. Because even if they die, they've done something.
Yeah, the fact that it dies to removal without any value is the biggest problem.
Exactly.
Like, if it's a problem, they can kill it with no consequence whatsoever, unlike Eidolon of the Great Rebel.
Right.
And of course, if it isn't a problem, then it's literally just a 2/2 Grizzly Bear,
which Burn cannot play. Like, Merfolk can get around it a little bit because the 2/2 Tidebinder Mage, it eventually becomes maybe a 4/4 with Island Walk or something.
I'd be so happy to see Harsh Mentor against Merfolk. I think it just affects Curse Catcher, Aether Vial, and Mutavault.
I believe that's correct.
About it. And I'm usually tapped out most of the time anyway, so I don't even think Mutavault is that big of a deal. Aether Vial is sort of a big deal, but
yep, but
it's weird. There would have to be Eidolon of the Great Revel and this Harsh Mentor in play at the exact same time for it to make any difference whatsoever.
Right, and it just isn't enough. I mean, it's very in Modern, in Standard, with vehicles being what they are. I'm not a Standard aficionado in any way. I don't play that format really, but from what I hear in Standard right now with vehicles, this might be great. This might be a great card, but we're talking about Modern. And, I mean, like I said, you've got the 9th most played card at Fulminator Mage, and then you go immediately all the way down to number 18, so each 9, with Relic of Progenitus. And then it goes again to like another 4 or 5 to like you're just in the top. You're just, aside from fetch lands, this thing does nothing. And the point I want to talk about that is
let's talk about fetch lands. Let's talk about fetch lands. How important are fetch lands? How much damage do you think we could bleed out of players just due to the fetch lands themselves?
Well,
do you know what? Because this is the thing. I completely wrote Harsh Mentor off. But then Rodney Top 8 Thompson speaks up and says, "Hey, you're going to take a lot of damage off your fetch lands." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is a lot of damage." It says you're definitely taking shocks no matter for every single time you crack a land.
Yeah, fetch lands are the only thing I think that make this even somewhat playable. Because, like you said, if you fetch and shock, you're getting double shocked. You're taking 5, right? That's a lot, especially against a burn deck, right? That's a huge portion of life. The problem, as I see it, is that this is a 2-mana card. So let's say you're on the play. Sorry, let's say you're on the draw.
Sure.
They play probably a fetch land, crack, pass. You're not getting this down until they've already had 2 full turns, and possibly have cracked and fetched already.
No, at least 1. They get 1 turn if they're on the draw. If they're on the play,
sorry. I meant the other way around.
If they're on the play, they'll have 2 full turns, and this is true. They'll have used their fetch lands.
Right, and it's against burn. If they know that's what you're playing, they're already going to be fetching conservatively. End of turn, just to get an untapped, shock land. Right, they're already going to be watching for that. So, I mean, it's possible that if they, let's say for sake of argument, they're using their first 2 turns with a fetch land. At best, with this card, you're going to get them for 1 of those. At best. That's with it in your opening hand. That's with nothing better or else to do on turn 2. And that's with them fetching and shocking the first 2 turns. There's a lot of things that have to line up with this And if it doesn't, it's a 2 mana do nothing. And then even if that happens, again, I don't like this dies to removal argument all the time, but in this case, it doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect. It doesn't have haste. It doesn't have these things that Burn wants.
There's a chance it will get nothing. So here's a big question I have for you. And this is always like a testament to all the new cards that I see for any sort of deck. What are your worst matchups, and does this help at all against them?
One of the decks that can race burn is Affinity. That shouldn't surprise anyone. Affinity is, one of the fastest decks in the format. This would be good against Affinity. This would be a really great card against Affinity. In fact, a lot of the time, especially if you're on the draw, you have to side out your Eidolons against Affinity because it's possible they can just barf their hand out. And
that's interesting, yeah.
Right? It's possible that you have to. I sometimes keep mine in. It depends because I've played Affinity before as well for a long period of time. There are times when you're playing a little bit of clunky stuff. And Eidolon does end up wrecking you. This is good against Affinity, and this is good against Lantern Control, and this is good against other janky weird stuff.
Yeah, but we're talking about bad matchups. Is Affinity a bad matchup?
I would say it's slightly unfavorable, but I wouldn't call it bad.
It's close to 50-50, and maybe Harsh Mentor would help push it in the right direction.
Yeah.
Do they bring in things like Whip Flare against you? Because that can clear the board on your side.
I've had that played against me. Usually they just try to race you, and they bring in things like Edge Champion, things like that.
Okay.
Which already can't have which already you can't hit with removal, unless you get really lucky with a chump block into a Skullcrack or something like that. Like really niche plays.
So
out of all the bad matchups, your bad matchups are things like that can race you easily and win, or things that can keep you from closing out the game and then just win in the late game. If Grixis Control has a really good hand where they just go like turn 1 Spell Snare, turn 2 Mana Leak, turn 3 Snapcaster Spell Snare again. Let's Dispel then you end up with like 2 cards in your hand. They're still at 15 life, and there's a Tassiger on the board, and you can't do anything. Or a Kitchen Finks comes in.
I imagine decks like Bant Eldrazi are very tough because they put really big creatures on the battlefield. They get around Eidolon of the Great Revel. They can search for Engineered Explosives, clear up all your creatures. I don't know if they have life gain. I can't. Think so.
That's not Collective Brutality. The white one has been good. No,
they do play. Was it Blessed Alliance?
That's it. Yes, I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah.
So decks like that you can win if you just outrace them. It's very, very draw dependent. It's very swingy because there's so much.
Okay,
haste.
So you still say there's a lot of game there.
Yeah, but again, these decks aren't really playing cards that this Harsh Mentor card even hits. There's Drowner of Hope, there's Eldrazi Displacer, and that's about it.
This is what I'm trying to bring up, is that matchups that seem unfavorable or are close or whatever aren't getting hit by this. And
no.
I believe Lantern Control is a good matchup for you.
Yes, it is. Because the idea is they just mill your card, and look, there's another bolt on top. And they mill that, there's another bolt. And you don't care about ensnaring bridge by the time they land it, and then you just bolt them out. Lantern's a great matchup.
So Harsh Mentor just being a win more card against that. So good against Affinity, but just pretty iffy against everything else.
Yeah, they just play around it if they're good players.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
one more quick thing I want to say, because there was a giant thing on the Salvation board about this, is people getting angry about comparing this card to Eidolon. This card is not Eidolon. No one is saying it's Eidolon, but the reason you have to compare it to it is because it's a 2-mana 2/2 that doesn't have haste or an enter the battlefield ability. So the idea is, if you're playing Harsh Mentor, well, what are you not playing? And you're not going to take out Eidolon. And so what else are you going to take out? No, you're
absolutely not going to take out Eidolon.
No, you're not taking out Eidolon. And you're not going to take out any burn spells. And you're not going to take out any of your other creatures, because it's not better than Goblin Guide or any of these other things. So I mean, like,
It has to be some sort of sideboard food or something.
and that's the other thing people said. But again, it's such a niche. It's such a potentially niche card in such scenarios, and it's so easy to just have it be a 2 mana do nothing. That it would have to be the most affinity heavy meta, or there'd have to be some crazy combo deck. Like if you go to MTG Goldfish, there was a budget Magic deck they put on today. I think it was a throwback deck to Fruity Pebbles, right, where it's playing Ornithopter, sacking it, milling or dealing damage, playing Ornithopter, and just doing that. Well, that would be great against that deck. This one but this is
No, but even then, like, Eidolon would be great against that deck as well.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, and there you go.
That's another thing I wanted to say. Harsh Mentor, whatever it's good against, almost whatever it's good against, it has to be good. Eidolon has to be good as well. I guess the exception being Affinity, because they're so fast they get all the stuff on the board. But I think even an Eggs deck, some sort of Eggs deck might suffer still from Eidolon enough that we don't need more stuff from, like, Harsh Mentor.
Right. The absolute ceiling for Harsh Mentor is the absolute floor for Eidolon. That's really what it is. Like, the best Harsh Mentor can do is reach the absolute floor of Eidolon, where you play it on turn 2 and it gets bolted or something, and they take 2 damage. That's
all right.
Like the absolute best. Anyway,
that's enough. That's enough for Harsh Mentor. Yes. We've been harsh enough on the Mentor. Let's move on to Soul Scar Mage. 1 red, 1/2 human wizard with prowess, not bad. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature, we all know what kind of non-combat damage Burn has. An opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature instead. So I'm going to start off, before because you're going to talk forever about this card.
Sorry, I apologize.
I mean,
you bring me on the show.
For me, Burn should be very aggressive, and there has to be damage to be had. I'll say this much: one mana. This is perfect. This is exactly where Burn wants to be. This is where any Eternal card wants to be for 1 mana. But it doesn't have haste. It just doesn't have haste, and I feel like its ability is incredibly underwhelming. If a source you would control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put -1/-1 counters. I understand it interacts with Kitchen Finks quite sort of favorably, but if the Kitchen Finks already hit the battlefield and gained life, that sounds terrible. But I mean, it's a way of getting rid of the Finks for good, because it will have -1. It will die with -1/-1 counters on it, which means its persist trigger will not trigger. So I think it's just a weird card. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of room in the Burn deck for a creature like this. Just like how we talked about there wasn't any room for Harsh Mentor. I wouldn't replace Goblin. I think this is way worse than Goblin Guide. I think this is worse than Swift Spear because it doesn't have haste. And haste is a very important aspect to Burn. It's what makes it so dangerous and threatening. Everything off the top of the deck is so live. And to be able to play this and let your opponent prepare for it with sorcery speeds, removal spells, or even just one more draw step to find removal, sucks a lot of the wind out of cards like this. So anyway, that's my non-Burn player opinion on Soul Scar Mage. But Andrew Deja Dryden, you are very excited about this card. Oh my god, this is this is going to be the new expertise combo.
Well, yeah, for those who don't know, because you wouldn't, it was a private message. John, when the expertise cards got spoiled, I was losing my mind. I thought this was like, Wizards, what are you doing?
Yeah, Modern's broken in half. Modern will be unplayable in 2 weeks.
Have you not learned that putting, you don't have to pay mana to cast things is just a recipe for breaking a format? What are you doing?
Well, it did make a broken combo deck. It just never took off.
That's true. Anyway, but that's what John's taking a shot at me there, and rightfully so, because the world didn't end, although they did make a rule change perhaps before the world ended. So, yes, I saw this card as I was on my way to work at 6 a.m. one day, and it made my day. The whole morning, I was like, "Oh man!" I was trying to brew up lists in my head. Oh, what am I going to do? It was a great day at work. I didn't hate a moment of it for once. You're completely right. I agree with you completely about 99% of what you said. It's not better than Goblin Guide. It's not better than Swift Spear. Like you said, we have to figure out where we put this in. And it is perhaps a bit niche or underwhelming. Um, the thing that I like about it is that I have been running lists with Nikachu, with 16 creatures in burn for a long time, which a lot of other people have too. This isn't just a me thing.
Oh yeah, this is
Brandon,
true. This is
yeah,
true.
right. More recently since Fatal Push, people have been moving away from the Nikachu list. I don't think that's necessary to do, but whatever. Now,
Whatever. Burns played with 16
six,
creatures before.
yes. Now, my very first thought, I haven't changed my mind yet, so we'll see how it goes, is to just simply swap this card in for Wild Nikachu. It's got a few benefits over that. For first, it's red to cast, so when someone plays Blood Moon on you with your 3-color mana base, you don't get those Nikatals stuck in your hand anymore because Stomping Grounds doesn't tap for green anymore and things like that. So you can still cast this card. It has prowess, which is a big deal in a deck that's slinging spells regularly, and yeah, like it's not better than any of the current creatures that see play all the time. The 12 stock creatures, Nikatal, Swiftspear, and Eidolon. What this might take the place of is a different creature like Wild Nikatal. You're right. Haste is a big deal. If this thing had haste, it'd be, oh my god, over the moon, because it'd basically just be a better Swiftspear, which would be fantastic, of course, if you're a burn player. Now, the thing this card does,
I would be really pissed with Wizards if they pushed this card so quickly when it was very obvious that Swiftspear was a very good card.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that would have been like
Swiftspear was upside.
Okay. Yeah,
hence why it's rare.
Right. Yeah, well, Swiftspear was only an uncommon, right? So if you upshift Swiftspear to rare, maybe you give it this ability,
Yeah.
So the thing about this card to me is that there are definitely in a lot of burn games where you get in with your Goblin Guides or your Swiftspear for a turn or two, and then Modern's fast. Everyone knows this. Modern is a fast format. And then by turn 2, turn 3 especially, you're going to have like 5-6 Goyfs. You're going to have 5-5 Death Shadows. You're going to have Tassigers. You're going to have Tidebinder Mages tapping down your team. Things like this, the ground is going to get gummed up in a hurry because your repetitive sources of damage are really important to you, because lightning bolts you can only throw once. If you can attack with a Goblin Guide 3 times unblocked, well, that's beyond fantastic, right? You basically got 2 lightning bolts for one red mana. This card to me is not an early game card. It costs 1, which is great because it means you can cast it on turn 3 or so more easily. But that's really when this card is going to shine. This card is going to shine. I mean, if you don't have any other creatures in your hand on turn 1, yeah, I guess play this. But this card is going to be like a turn 3. You play a Swiftspear. You play this card, you bolt, a Thought Knot Seer or something. Maybe that's a bad example because they might have taken it out of your hand if it was a problem. But you bolt something, a Spellskite. You bolt a Spellskite, and you make it a 1/1, and then you can attack into it with your now.
You mean you want to attack first? You would want to attack, let them block.
Yes, that's correct.
Otherwise, well, I mean, I guess not. It doesn't matter because it's -1 counters, and it's not until end of turn.
Right. Yeah.
So you could still bolt the Swift Spellskite. You could leave it as a 1 button.
Yeah.
But I think the best way to get them is you attack first, let them block, and then
that is true.
You bolt it once and it's gone.
It's effectively the same thing. They're basically choosing to either chump block their creature or not. One of the ways they know it's coming, one of the ways they don't. You're right. Revealing more information is worse. But the point is that you can attack into this thing. Whereas a Spellskite would stonewall you for the next infinite number of turns. You can get through it. After this turn, if they don't have any follow-ups. This is really it's a 1-drop. That's a 1/2 with prowess. And I'm going to call this a late game burn card, if that makes sense.
But here's the thing. With your Spellskite example, any burn spell would have done the same thing with just a normal Swiftspear. It's the same result. You attack with the Swiftspear, they block, you lightning bolt the thing, Spellskite dies. It's an identical result. So what makes Soulscar Mage unique?
Well, the first part is that it also affects its power. A Spellskite might be a bad example because it's a 0/4, right? So a -3
So we
one
gotta talk about like Tasigur, for example.
Tasker, or you know, say
You hate Tasigur. I know
I
you
do
hate
hate
Tasigur.
Tasker. I mean,
Sad,
burn.
and
I'm
oddly
not really
enough, I
burn
see you
player.
in front of a Tasigur like 95% of the games that I spectate. Even
Yeah,
in Grand Prix Vancouver, like every single piece of video I had of you is you were up against a Tasigur.
they're hard to attack through. It's ridiculous. They're just so frustrating, and they come down on turn two nowadays. It's insane. So yeah, so it affects the power, right? Example, like a Tasigur, you can attack in, and not only can you attack through this thing, your creatures don't die anymore. That's
Right,
another
right.
big
Okay,
part,
so
right?
now
Your
if you
creatures
bolt
live
this
to fight
thing,
another day.
he becomes a
Exactly,
1/2 creature that actually just dies to Soulscar Mage.
exactly. Or Swiss Spear, or even go all of them, all of the creatures, all of the creatures.
All of the creatures. Attack with that, whatever you want.
The best creatures. We're gonna ruin your creatures.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that things like let's say we'll go back to Affinity. Let's say a Ravager puts a whole bunch of counters onto an Inkmoth Nexus or a Vault Scourge. You know, Vault Scourge isn't gaining 3 life anymore. You know, or it's gaining 3 less life than it would previously. Inkmoth Nexus isn't
So
dealing
like
you the
even if
3
they save the creature,
exactly.
their power is still 3 power less.
Right. It still matters in that respect. It makes your creatures trade better. Now, granted, and a lot of burn players, if they're watching this, are going to be screaming, like, "Oh, bolting the creature is a bad idea." Yeah, it is. But you know what? Sometimes you have to do it, right? Like
Yeah, you do what you have
you
to
do
do
what
in
you have to do.
Magic.
And the one card that it really makes better, the one card that it makes so much better, is a card that's a 4 of in most lists, and that is Searing Blaze. Searing Blaze targets the creature and the player, and now the creature is weaker. You know,
It's
you can
just yeah,
attack.
it's Searing Blaze with upside.
Oh, Searing Blaze gets so much better. Oh, it's fantastic. So you know what? I readily admit that the way I play Burn and the way some people play Burn has a bit more of a zoo element to it, in the sense that they have the 16 creatures, they attack a bit more, they try to get more damage in on the ground. And I can make an argument here, you know, and that might not be optimal in all situations, but it makes things like Leyline of Sanctity, you know, something you can attack through and win. You know, it doesn't just shut down half your deck anymore. You know, it makes matchups like
How does it not shut down your deck, Leyline of Sanctity? That's interesting.
well, when you've got those extra 4 creatures, whether it's Nikachu or this,
Oh,
or
right. You want to,
you know,
yeah, okay. If you're the heavy creature build, you're not dependent on burn spells.
exactly.
But curiously, with pure prowess, where are those burn spells going?
Sometimes you have to bolt yourself. I've won a fair number of games. In Grand Prix Vancouver, I did. In the Grand Prix trial for Vancouver, I did. I beat. Why can't I remember the name? Lightning Storm. Phyrexian Unlife. What deck am I describing? John, help me out here.
Ad nauseum?
Thank you. I get ad nauseum. I'm sorry, my brain got stuck there. Yeah, ad nauseum. I beat ad nauseum by when they mulligan down to like a 5-card hand that has Leyline of Sanctity. They drop 1 or 2 of them on the board, and you go, okay, fine. Start just swinging with your creatures. You skull crack and bolt yourself. It doesn't matter, because they're either going to deal you 50 damage with Lightning Storm, or they're going to deal you 0 damage. So you just keep hitting yourself with burn spells, and you keep attacking in with your creatures.
Right.
So anyway, basically, long story short, it makes Leyline of Sanctity less of a bomb against you.
Yeah, if you're playing a creature dense version.
It makes you more versatile, and in fact, because of this, and because I know people are going to be maybe criticizing this point, there was an article written on Channel Fireball last October by Brian DeMars, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, on October 6th, and he ranked the best 25 decks in Modern. Oh yeah, that's right. I think you're on your channel. They talked about this because Merfolk was like 20th or something unfair. I feel. Anyway, he put number 3. He put Naya Burn at number 3 out of the 25 decks, and that's not the point to keep in mind though. The point to keep in mind though is he put Naya Burn and Naya Zoo and Red Green Zoo in these decks together, because they largely are doing the same thing, just with a different mixture of creatures to burn spells. But they're basically doing the same thing. So, you know, if you're like, oh, this is Zoo, I'm like, well, you know what, there's a little bit of Zoo in burn and vice versa. So, you know, it's very possible this card I'm thinking this card's going to be great against Goyfs and all these big creatures that I have trouble with in my local meta. But and I might be wrong. It's very possible I'm wrong.
Hey, you made a pretty good point. Searing Blaze got a billion times better.
So much better.
And Burn has been playing with 16 creatures for a very long time now. They had no problem playing with Wild Nikachu, and getting this thing to a 3/4 is not that difficult. I have faced millions of giant Swift Spears. I'm still facing tons of giant Swift Spears.
Yeah, one thing I will say is that originally I thought this was an automatic 4 in Burn. I've since re-looked at the list I put together, and I don't think it's an automatic 4 just because ideally this isn't the turn 1 creature you're putting into play. This is, again, like I said, more of a turn 3 bolt attack with the other 2 you've put in, or the other 2 or 3 you've put in. So I think this might be, right now I've got a mock deck list together, and this is a 3 in the main deck. But maybe it's less. Maybe it's a sideboard card against Jund and big decks like that. Maybe it's a sideboard card against things that just go big quickly.
It looks like a weird sideboard card. This looks like it has to be in the main deck. It has to be like a stock part of the stock list, or get the hell out of here.
I agree, but you know what? I'm just saying maybe I'm wrong. I'm not putting my entire online reputation on this card, but I think it's going to be good.
It seemed like you did in the group chat.
That's true. Well, I had a couple.
I feel like there were bets being made. This is seeing play.
Well, we'll see play for me. That's for sure. I'm very confident. I am 85% sure that this should be
a 1-5-0 on that on MTG top 8 from someone in Burn. It's going to be you.
Exactly. And this is going to be a good card. Haste, again, back to the original argument, not having haste hurts, but it's a 1-mana creature that has synergy with your deck, allows you to go over the top in what I will call the Burn late game. Like a 1-drop being a late game card seems strange, but whatever. That's how it works in Burn. So yeah, I think this card is real. I think this is a real card. It's going to see real play.
Coming from the Merfolk perspective, honestly, I'm not happy to see this. I'm not happy to see this at all. I know it's going to get 1 less damage in than the Swift Spears do, but the Swift Spear is just the hardest card for me to deal with, because that thing it gets to a 2/3 creature just beats my entire deck.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to block with, for example, a 3/3 Lord, because you easily can just kill one, and then all of a sudden I have a 2/2 creatures facing off a 2/3 creature. So even though it loses haste, it's still just as dangerous. And I guess this is even more dangerous because even if I play a Lord to make all my creatures 4/4s, if you did try to burn one of the creatures, they're a 1/1, and my entire Lord army is that much more vulnerable.
That's correct.
It's permanently on the verge of death.
Yeah, and then the other thing about prowess is a huge deal. Not having haste, again, that's a big deal, but prowess is a big deal because of one of the big haymakers in the deck as well, which is Atarka's Command. Atarka's Command is basically a double prowess trigger, because it gives +1/+1 and the fact you're casting the spell, right? So, for example, this with Atarka's Command, it actually becomes a 3/4, So, I mean, it's...
Easily.
Prowess is a big deal, and that's... so this is playable. This is playable. I think it's absolutely playable. I think it's great. I'm excited. I am so looking forward to picking up these copies of this card on opening day and putting them in immediately. This is going to see play at local games.
Japanese foils, get them while they're before Andrew Dayton has
all of them. I'm going to corner the market.
Crushed the online metagame and won a Grand Prix with this thing.
Right, that's exactly what's going to happen. So
yeah, because the price of Soulscar Mage is apparently going to go up.
Well, I don't know where else it's going to see play, but I know it's going to see play in Modern Burn.
It might even could see play in Legacy as well. Does this thing have any chance in Legacy?
I don't see it.
Does it matter?
No.
Do they play Searing Blaze in Legacy?
Yes, but
it doesn't matter?
Yes, but a lot of lists don't. A lot of lists play Searing Blood to get that same effect.
Right. And it kills Delver anyway.
Right, but the thing is that effect is usually a sideboard effect. Well, you know how Legacy is, right? Because it's so swingy, right? There are some matchups you just straight
It's
up can't win against, and some
it's weird.
matchups
They
you
would
just
play
crush all
Searing
the.
Blood over Searing Blaze. It's basically the same thing.
Well, one has the ability to get turned on from fetch lands.
Yeah.
So if they're not running fetch lands, they'll be running Searing Blood. If
You
they
could just
are,
play a land.
yeah,
I guess it turns into a sorcery speed card though.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to want to hit one for the opponent and one on the creature, right? So it's
Yeah.
on their turn.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's
So
that's
I get it.
now
And the damage might be relevant against Elver decks.
relevant against everything because it's less damage against the creature and against the opponent, right? So
Hmm.
it's just straight up less damage. Um, and the other thing to keep in mind for Legacy, at least, is Legacy is just a lot more powerful, obviously, but it's more powerful in the sense that Burn is able to goldfish faster with cards with free spells, most notably Fire Blast. So whereas Modern, you can goldfish on say like turn 3 in a really good scenario, turn 4 like almost all the time. Legacy, you can goldfish without any disruption on turn 3 almost all the time already. The problem is that the other decks that are trying to goldfish usually goldfish faster than that, turn one
Oh
or
no.
two. Right? Yeah, it's horrible. And the so you really play on the slower, fairer decks like Hate Bears and things like that. So this card probably doesn't matter because by the time it lands and by the time you want that burn late game
Hmm.
in Legacy, you've probably already either the opponent has either already won, you've already won, or the opponent has gone so far ahead that you can't win anymore. So
Right. Right.
this card I don't think sees play in Legacy unless there's a very heavy like Delver Hate Bears metagame, which like you really just want those extra copies against. But I can't see that happening personally.
All right. That was great. That was some great discussion talking about the new hot burn cards. I can't evaluate these cards perfectly because I don't play burn and I don't know exactly all the problematic matchups or all the problems that burn players go through, and that's one of the most important things that I like to think about when I evaluate cards. I'm always looking for, what problems need solving, and do these cards solve those problems?
Sorry, one more thing I'd like to just quickly point out is that we're talking about burn and this card in it. However, there's a really good chance that this card could see play in a different deck also, right? A blue-red prowess deck could use this with this and Swift Spear and a few other cards, and
It's
just
possible.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a blue-red spells deck that could be useful in this. And something, sorry, that we didn't mention about Harsh Mentor. Do you want to talk about it in Legacy? Or no?
Is it well? Would you think it has some potential in Legacy?
I think it's got more potential in Legacy than it does Modern because of things like Divining Top and Rishadan Port. Like there's a lot more
Yeah, but are those bad
Deathless
matchups?
Shaman.
Like, you take like Death and Taxes for example. Like Wasteland and Port doesn't do anything to you because you can just respond with burn spells.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's
I have no
no.
idea but they are so good on the ground. It's an amazing ground deck. But I
Which
just
is
don't know
bad.
what the
Death and
matchup is like
Taxes.
whatsoever.
Which is good on the ground. Death and Taxes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of they've got
No, I agree. I just wanted to
Containment
make sure.
Priest and Mother of Runes, Flicker Wisp. They have that double striking creature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. However, one of the hard.
Thalia.
Yeah,
Thalia. Oh,
yeah,
that's actually pretty good against burn.
no, it is. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like Burn has a good matchup against those fair creature-based decks, but I mean, they can roll out Thalia, Core
Hmm.
Firewalker, Mother of Runes, right? These cards are hard to play against and demand immediate answers. However, a card like Harsh Mentor, well, have fun with your Mother of Runes. Go for it. Like, every turn you're going to take 2, and then I'll play a Sulfuric Vortex, and you'll take 4 every turn.
Hmm.
And you can't gain life. So it's got a potential. I could see it being a potential sideboard card in Legacy.
No, but like against what decks are you like is Miracles a bad matchup?
Miracles is not a bad matchup, but it's close. And again, it's very draw dependent. If they can set up a counterbalance lock, it becomes very hard to win through unless you're playing. Which is the reason you play Exquisite Firecraft.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In Legacy. So, if you're not drawing, your Firecrafts or things like that, or they get a bit of a lock on you, it can be. I'm not saying it'll see play. I'm saying it could maybe be sideboardable in Legacy. just because of there's more activated abilities you have to deal with in Legacy than you do in Modern. So that's the one thing I will say.
And
About
a lot more fetch lands.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't know if there's a lot more fetch lands. Maybe there's the same number of fetch lands.
There's
I'm
probably
not
the
sure.
same number, but it makes them. Again, the problem is that if they just fetch early, it's not
Actually, this Harsh Mentor is a killer against Death and Taxes. You like shut off their Vial, you disable their Rishadan ports. What else?
Well, we
Like
mentioned
Stoneforge Mystic costs mana, or sorry,
yes.
costs life to put a Batterskull into play.
And it costs mana to equip things like a Jitte or a Batterskull.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
So it has
you're gonna pay a ton of life before that stuff is gonna start paying interest.
Yeah. No, it's possible there's just better options. Because, like I said, you can win that matchup if you're prepared for it. This might not be the best option, but it has potential. Again, there's cards like Deathrite Shaman. There's things like that. So it has potential, but not. Maybe I don't know.
Shuts off Deathrite Shaman. Who knows? Hey, that's a big card. That's a big game in Legacy.
Yeah. But again, this is it's a 2-mana bear, right? Like 2 mana might even it's possible that's a little bit slow. It's possible that's a little bit too much. I don't know. It
attacks through Deathrite Shaman, and it trades with Delver.
That's
this card
true.
Probably has a lot of game against Delver decks. They could kill it. They should have a lot of answers. Well, here's my problem against Delver decks is that they should have a lot of answers to it, like either in the form of Force of Will, Daze. Like even on the draw, I think like they could play Daze on this thing, like turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, and then you play turn 2 Harsh Mentor, and they bounce their only land to their hand to play Daze, and then on turn they still have turn 2 mana because they have Deathrite Shaman in play.
Yeah, and then the other problem again though becomes what do you cut for this, right? Like I mean, like it's Burns a very stock list. I mean, aside from a few sideboard things, depending on what you want to hate on. And you've already got hate for some of these decks, So I see it being a narrow sideboard potential in Legacy, but that's the best. That's the most complimentary thing I'll say about that.
Yeah. Hey, Modern's allowed to play 16 creatures. Maybe you can still play 16 creatures in Legacy.
Not Harsh Mentor. This thing is garbage.
Okay.
Not in Modern. This thing, no.
All right, we're gonna see what the future has in store for us. Looks like it might be Soulscar Mage. Thanks a lot for coming around here, Andrew Day 2 Dryden. I thought it was a very good discussion. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it.
I hope so, because I know your channel's Merfolk, and I hope people at least sort of found this
some people want to know more about spoilers. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And now my opinion's out there online. It's going to be out there for the public record. So,
yeah, do you agree or disagree with Andrew Day 2 Dryden? What do you guys think about Harsh Mentor and Soulscar Mage?
Because now I can't be like, I never said that.
Yeah, it's there. People can look you up 4 years from now and say, no, this is what you said.
Oh, look how dumb you were.
Yeah. You said Harsh Mentor was... Oh, man, but I have so many of those.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I said very bad things about Harbinger of the Tides. I still hate Harbinger of the Tides, by the way. What else? No, I mean, I got Jace Vryn's Prodigy all wrong. Everyone got it wrong, though.
Yeah, everyone did. That card
no one said that card was good. That was the biggest sleeper in like the last few years.
Yeah, it was like a $12 mythic until like one weekend it went to $90. Like, okay, exactly. I guess this is a big deal now. So yeah, everyone got that wrong until they didn't. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But anyway, yeah.
So anyway, everyone, thank you very much for watching. As usual, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much to Andrew Day 2 Dryden giving us his opinion on these cards. This has been Nikachu and Andrew Day 2 Dryden previewing the red burn cards from Amonkhet.